I know teachers right now are into their 40s who are still paying college loans off.
The people that aren't in education complain about what we're not doing in education. You're like, all right, so the people that are doing cool stuff, you almost have borderline a moral obligation to say, all right, this is what I'm doing then.
Let me ask you a very quick question. Is it easier to get a passport than it is to substitute teach?
Yep. Like, be lazy. Well, if I'm training people to be teachers, be lazy. Yeah, shut up and let them do it.
There's two emotions that I straddle, right? Is hope and worry. So I'm worried to death about kids, but I'm super hopeful about the future.
Education wants the instant gratification. They want the weeds. They don't want the trees.
CTE is coming gangbusters for the traditional, practitioners who don't want to even entertain moving things around for the sake of efficacy.
Do we need as much time as we need to do school?
I mean, if you're asking a 14-year-old, they're going to tell you a weekend will be fine. But no, I want to challenge kids.
If you're about to listen to this podcast, buckle up.
You're listening to the Disrupt Education Podcast. Here are your hosts, Peter Hostrawser and Alli Dahl.
I was in the clouds. We're in the clouds here on the Disrupt Education Podcast. Actually, that's a skydiving connotation. I just thought of that. Hi, Alli. How you doing?
I'm good. Speaking of clouds, just I think I have said this before. Like, everybody does ask me when I skydive, like, oh, do you jump through clouds and everything? And you can't. The FAA regulates jumping through clouds because you really can't see anything. It's not as cool as you think it would be. I have done it in Italy. It's legal there, so I can openly share that I have jumped through clouds. It was actually terrifying because when you are skydiving, you generally want to know where other people are in the air and certainly under canopy. And you want to know where you are relative to the ground. If you're in a cloud, you can't do any of those things. And so imagine it'd be like driving a car in really thick fog. Like, the visibility is the worst you've ever experienced it, and you can barely see the road. Like, what if somebody is slammed on their brakes? Like, are you going to be able to slam on your brakes in time? Obviously there's generally more space in the air, but there's this whole department called air traffic control. And if you ever look at how they have to direct all these airplanes to basically prevent them from crashing, clouds play a major point in that. But unlike an airplane that's equipped to kind of know what's around it, even in clouds, you can't do that as a skydiver. So we generally want to have vision, actually to see what we're doing. And the same applies in education. You want to know where you're going. You don't really want to be in the clouds. It's a phrase people use. Oh, be in the clouds. But I'm here to tell you, it's not actually a good place to be.
That rolls right into last week's episode with Scott Carr. I love that. And I didn't even think of that. But I think that's where we started talking about innovative teachers and just pulling that whole conversation apart. Feeling a lot of energy, a lot of creativity. That's what that was all about, and how to scale it. And I really, man, I just want to start with he was a football coach for over a decade or so. And I really got that sense from him as, you're coaching an entire team, but the team now is not a bunch of players and gear. It's actually educators. It's a community of educators. And I really got that sense. I'm the son of a football coach, and it really, throughout the playbook, let's try some things. And there's always time in our practice in high school when I did play football for a minute, and there was a kind of last second things that you did, and you're like, okay, so we've got the end of practice and we have this special play. Let's try it with a hook and ladder or a Hail Mary or something like that. And it was always the most fun. And occasionally, when the time was right, you did that on the field, and we were successful at it a couple of times. As a matter of fact, I was just talking to one of Naperville's elementary freshman coaches, and they did the hook and ladder where you catch the ball and then you flip it to somebody else when no one's expecting, and they scored off of just that. So, my point is in education and just that phase one. I really love that phase one, but man, when you get a phase two going and you get somebody to try it out, and it's actually that's where I would call it in the game, right? Phase one, you're probably doing stuff in your classroom, and then phase two is where they're like, hey, let's go ahead and go deeper with this. You have a little bit of a blessing from admin, and then the timing's right, and then it just becomes part of everything, which is a very difficult pinnacle to get to when we're talking about transformative change in education. So,
Scott's work is definitely not in the clouds, and it's not in a playbook. I love that.
mhm,
You're with your football analogy, I'm thinking like, when you do those Hail Mary type plays, you're kind of throwing out the playbook in a sense
mhm,
because you're trying something that for the most part doesn't come up all the time, and you can't really predict when you're going to need it. You have to kind of discover it in the moment.
mhm,
And a Hail Mary really is just that. Like you're taking your chances on something different and seeing what the outcome can be. And that's what a lot of Scott's work is, but not everyone's willing to take the risk because it's not quote unquote always successful.
mhm.
Um, you know, I we can all remember, probably if you've watched sports at all in your life, there's probably a team that did something last minute and it changed the outcome of the game for better or for worse, and it sticks in your mind. It's just like there. You're like either we won or we lost because of this. And I think when we innovate and the type of work that Scott's doing, you have to be able to remove yourself from the outcome because otherwise you just won't do
Yep.
it. You won't do the type of work that he's getting at, um, which is a long-term revisioning, reorganizing, reculturing of the school system. And it's deep work. I know I got really excited. I mean, that's why we had him back. We
Mhm.
love talking to Scott. Like the work that he's doing, if I was in a classroom full time, I would completely be bought in to the model that he's suggesting and kind of being a test rat, so to speak, willing to try the Hail Mary, willing to to just do the work and see what happens because I'm just the type of person, I think you're the type of person who's like, we don't want to be bored. We won't
Yeah.
want to just like do the same thing. Whereas we've had guests on, I believe the Don Wettrick said it, like you can teach, you know, 1 year 25 times, or you
Yep.
can teach 25 years like differently each time. He
Yeah.
worded it better than that, but you get what I'm saying. Like,
Hmm.
I think what Scott's work is getting at is, and this was what stuck out the most to me, is he's like, what would change if you knew your students more?
Yeah.
What would change? That hit me so hard because I'm immediately thinking, what were my favorite classes, my favorite moments in education? It was the kids that I knew the best. I knew
Hmm.
their stories, I knew their purpose. And it could help them towards it. And I adjusted my own teaching for those kids to reach them deeper. And doing it at a much bigger, broader, even deeper level than like what I ever tried. And I
Yeah.
was just so excited to be like, wow, what a time to be in education if that is the type of work we're leaning into.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I like I said during that whole podcast, I was thinking about attaching every piece that he was saying to I would call them innovative internship courses, where we do this year. Brett and I have gone deeper into really trying to better align our community needs with our students in the class. And it has been literally like, as I'm looking into a screen here, right over here, I have LinkedIn, and I attached a student with a not-for-profit hero in our community, and it's literally like it's growing over here. So if I'm like over here smiling, because that's what's happening, but that's exactly you're absolutely right. The students come to class asking questions. They come to class trying things. They come to class when you give them the okay, like you can talk to another example. You can I connected a student with a biotechnology entrepreneur, right? That I know, like in my network, and again, it's like I'm not. He's like he said biotech, and I was like, oh, well, I got somebody. He's started a business and he did pretty well for himself. Blah blah blah. Here you go, right? And what Scott is doing though is helping leaders help their educators do that, right? Like you and I, we're going to do it. We're going to be like,
Yep.
whatever, it's opposite. You know what? We're going to talk about this and I'm going to bring this person in. And we've done it on the podcast. We're like, oh, Allie, you know this person, let's bring him in and let's have these conversations. What if we did it with our students
I
on an
know.
individual basis? So the one student who is talking with a biotechnology, entrepreneur, it, I mean, he was like he has like half of my fifth period and a sixth period that he needs. Well, he asked me during sixth period, so I don't care. But I just reached out to his, senior rhetoric class teacher, and I was like, "Would you mind? He's got a really good opportunity if he can leave class 20 minutes early." Yeah, sure. We're blended that day, so they were blended that day. But like, yeah, that when you see that goes back
Mm.
to what you said and Scott said is what if we knew more about our students and in how they are and what they're interested in and what their passions are. I also like because to a fault, I'm a person who wants to get to 0 to 100 really quick. I'm
Mm.
like, you don't have a lot of time. You're young once, you got to go. Let's do this. But I do really appreciate how Scott was like, this takes time, and it's a coaching model. We shouldn't jump right in, which I'm guilty of, right into community, jumping
Yeah.
into that. And I've done that, and I've held people to the fire really quickly. I don't know. Sometimes it works, but we're there to coach them through it. So it's that's the way I Z to A things, though. I'm like, you got here's the I don't want to call it outcome, but here's what you guys need to do. I like where he said we're going to email you the night before and say, okay, come up with this, and we'll talk about it tomorrow. Because that's what business does. That's what life and professional world does, whether you're not for profit or anything. So. I struggle with that jumping right into community because sometimes kids are just done listening to us and they're already burnt out. So
Mm.
how do we do that? So I think that was one thing that if Scott, you're listening, that's going to be the questioning. Peter questioned this, so I did. Because we're going to go Z to A. Shouldn't we just pop community in there and then start to figure things out? I don't know.
Well, you know, we appreciate Scott and that I didn't realize that he, took it to heart, so much what we say. We, you know, to our listeners, like we are very appreciative
Yeah.
that you spend time with us each week and we don't take it for granted. We really try to give you the best guests, the best discussions of people who are disrupting education because we know more people need to hear
Yeah.
they need this kind of like weekly dose or you need the right conversation at the right time, right? So it's like you're this question about like Z to A to Z, where does community fit in and whatnot, I think comes in with like okay, if you know your students, you don't skip that part. So that's the Z that
Hmm.
people usually don't even get to, right? It's like it's this afterthought. Oh, the kids are graduating. Wait, who are you? And like, what do you want to do? But like, if we start that process earlier, then we can put students with the right community partners, experiences, rather than just kind of like well, I hope this works out,
Hmm.
or kind of a one size fits most versus this is an individual. Look, I know you're really interested in skydiving, and so I know someone. I know Alli Dahl, and she's a skydiving instructor, and she can really, you got to be 18, but she can give you a lot of information about skydiving so that once you are 18, you can make the choice if like becoming a skydiving instructor is for you.
Hmm.
That would be really individualized.
Yeah.
Because there are some kids, I've taken kids on their 18th birthday.
Hmm.
On their 18th birthday, they're still in high school. They've gone skydiving with me. But that's not for everybody. It's not for Scott. He told us that
Yeah, that was a
earlier.
great. Oh man.
But like, right, like, or for the kid who is really interested in business sales, man, like I don't want to, I'm not a salesperson. I mean,
Hmm.
like in the traditional sense.
Yeah.
And so, right, if you were like pairing me with some sales company to learn sales techniques, I would be so checked out. But if
Yeah.
that's because you wouldn't, if you like put your entire internship or entrepreneurship class through that experience, and you don't really know your individual students, then like that's where I think that's what I got from what Scott was saying is like they jumped so fast into, okay, well, we have this program, we have these partnerships, so we're just going to put all the kids into it.
Hmm.
That's
Right.
not
Yeah.
innovative, right? Like
Yes. Yes.
that's missing the point
Yep.
of like getting kids engaged and doing things differently
Hmm.
in schools.
Yes.
Um, so that's where I would, I liked what Scott was saying,
Hmm.
that the Z to A approach, you can move too fast. He's definitely like a slow burn approach.
Yeah.
Like, right? And like me and you, and I will say this, that on the Disrupt Education podcast, we have searched for what is it? What is it? What is it? And I think we're like in a better space where we can do a slow burn. But for people listening, and if you've just found this podcast, you're probably like, what can I do right now to change and disrupt education and like blow the whole system up? Because we have been there. We have.
Yep.
And it, Scott's approach, he's like, and he said this last year. So we will link his episode from last year. He's like, most people want to make a change in 100 days. And he says, add a zero to it.
Yeah. Yep.
And you think when you started this podcast, like 10 years ago, when this
Mhm.
comes out almost, right?
Yep.
Like you were like, oh, I'm probably going to figure it out in 10 episodes and then 100 episodes. And now we're over 400 episodes. And like, that you got to put another zero on it.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. We are at 401. Scott was 400.
Ah,
So he doesn't know that, but he will now. Yeah. So but you're right. I
secretively,
think
secretively.
with that being said, it is as I thought students would start to say what is wrong with school, those stories, there was some similarities between the stories. And a lot of it had to do with skills and attaching learning to purposeful life rather than just generic data, um, analytic data, and that's it. But the more and more I did start to begin to have these conversations with students who had just graduated high school way back, there's a highly individualized story behind each one of them. And to our point of what we're talking about here is just understanding the students and having them really start to go through who they are, kind of looking at into their purpose and having them grow. And actually, and in Naperville, we have that data in our, little corner of internship world where last year we were just trying to scale. So we had some students in our course that were not on a pathway endorsement program, and we had some that were. We had more that were, but we allowed some to come through without it, and it made a difference. That the impact for the
Mm,
students who were not in a pathway was not as great as
mm.
the students who are in a pathway. So I know Brett and I, we have data on this, and it is impact data is what we
Yeah.
would call it. So you're right on there, right? Not that the other students didn't need it. It's just that we have to look at that as a different way, and we learned because we were like we're still hockey sticking, like growing, but yeah, I think that is probably over the last year, talking to all of the people that we've talked to in our conversations is, how to run this marathon with a little bit of sprinting inside of it, and that's tough. That's very hard for me to do.
Mm.
And I really appreciate that from everybody, including yourself, like, trying to say, okay, let's take a look at this and let's do some different things. But I think that's what makes, again, a great team. Um, and again, going back into what Scott was talking about, have the kids working in teams, right? Have them, interacting. We can know kids individually, but you have to understand how to work on a team. I think, I've worked on dysfunctional teams, and I've worked on really, really efficient and effective teams, which I believe I'm on now, not only just with the podcast. Big shout out to you, Allie,
Aw.
but also in my career right now at District 203. So yeah, there's so many pieces to pull out, but I would say that Scott, and again, working alongside him and watching him with school leaders in a live session is something that really, I know we had conversations about it, but really he can identify and coach anybody at any time in the process. And I was like, wow, man, this guy really understands where people are by asking a few questions and listening, and then being able to find out, where in those phases he was talking about, and where each an individual community is, a place to where he can start to coach to move the needle. And yeah, I can talk about it, but I can't show it. And I would highly encourage people just to, take a look at some of his stuff.
I mean, it's what Scott does, I think it's similar to, we had Simon and Jeff on
Yeah.
earlier this year, and they are all about, coaching versus consulting. And
Yep.
Scott made the distinction of coaching versus teaching.
Hmm.
And, that type of approach, I don't think it's a pendulum swing
Yeah.
that's going to, burn out. I think it's a real route for change in a system, because the work he's doing is not slapping a band-aid on. He's literally getting at the core and the heart of, like, why are we even here?
Yeah.
What are we doing here? And, like, what are your students doing here? And he he starts with the leadership, because, to get at that kind of reculturing, it has to be, he says, cognitive investment leads to
Hmm.
emotional investment, and that is what leads to experimentation. And um he's not trying to force anybody into the work. And I don't know if he said this on air or off here, but he says, like, the work I do kind of starts off as like a lonely man work, and then, people start buying into it, because he is really good at what he does, and
Hmm.
getting people to realize their purpose and their why, and that changes the conversation, and it's a snowball effect, which
Hmm.
we've had in this series, right, where people are doing this type of work. It starts with something seemingly innocuous, something small, but it really is planting seeds for the next generation. I mean, I think of Christy Valesky talking about the garbage cans or like the grates that the kids like painted, or like they beautified this community space because it was ugly to them. That's what they noticed. They were
Hmm.
bought into it, and to maybe me or you or somebody else wouldn't have even noticed it, but it didn't matter. That's not the
Hmm.
point. The point is they were bought in. They were, that's what mattered to them. They had a purpose behind it, and then it grows from there. And the other key part is, and in Scott's work as well, is it's linked to community. There's not
Hmm.
a silo. He's trying to get rid of them. And that is long-term work because people are stubborn. They, or the seemingly stubborn. He's
Right.
good at getting like this. I think that's where his gift is he's really good at kind of asking the right questions and coaching you through these conditions that you think you need but you don't really need. Like, right,
Hmm.
it's like pulling back the curtain on like, well, why do you do this or why do you do this? And like you, if you play the five whys, if you've ever done that exercise, eventually you get down to the fourth or fifth why, and you're like, I don't know why I do this. Like, I there's really not a good reason for it.
Yeah.
I could change this because it's not deeply rooted. And if your work is deeply rooted, you would totally change what you're doing because you would have a clear purpose. And if everybody does, including the students, you can make giant strides for the type of work that he's talking about.
Hmm. Yeah, and I'm going to go back to, I know I said I would say it on this episode, but the educator, right? The one who really loved their K through 12 experience, and then the other one that didn't like their K through 12 experience. But I think though that just to your point, right? And I know I was like harsh on the last podcast about it. Oh man, well the ones who just love they're so status quo. Not necessarily, because here we are. And also I think that one of the things that Scott was saying, and you're talking about right now, is when you start to ask why, you start to realize why you like school. And it always goes back to an individualized kind of something where you had the opportunity to experience, to learn something that attached to you. And if you look at the bell curve or whatever, right, and statistically, of course, that's going to work for 20 to 30%, right? You're looking at the curve, and yeah, there you go. So I think, it's not one or the other. I really think it's the the people who were educated and then came out of that system and realized what really stuck with them. You could be like, me, like a maybe a 2.9 GPA, didn't really like school all that much, played the game, but then you start to think about those things that really impacted you. I go all the way back to like third grade or second grade. I still remember when you were talking about the experience, the field trip, in the last episode. Molly Pitcher. Do you ever know the story of Molly Pitcher? This is so old. I think it was a Civil War story where, there was a lady, her name was Molly. You can look this up somewhere on chat. But like, she helped, mend soldiers that were like dying, and we had to act it out. And I remember acting it out, right? Because I got to move around and do all the different things. And I still remember, I know exactly where I was on the school grounds, which is still there, um, and where that happened. So to your point, like I remember that, right? I remember a lot of different things where it was active and different things. So I think it's highly individualized, and the educators who are not getting burned out in the system are the educators, as Scott was saying, are led or coached with an administration, a leadership, a community that is going to allow them to not know the answer going into something. And hey, let's go find out. Let's see if it works. If it doesn't, that's okay. Yeah, there's so many layers to it, and I just, I would my mind, if you didn't hear last week's episode, like or if you did, go back and listen to it, but think as a student when you were in school, no matter what age. And
Mm-hmm.
like my mind was spinning for some reason. I didn't get a lot of sleep last night. Maybe that's why. But it was like, it was really like, I mean, the stories and the methods and the coaching that Scott was talking about really
Yeah.
just brought up some memories. And then I started to think, okay, this is why I'm here doing, these conversations with you, Allie, having conversations with amazing people in education in the system, creating these opportunities for different people, helping coach and be coached by
Yeah.
students and educators. So there I am. I'm living proof, I guess. I don't know.
You are. But that's getting at impact,
Yeah,
not outcome.
100%.
And I love that point that Scott brought out. Like schools want to focus on outcome data or they feel like they have to. And it's like you can tell your own stories,
Hmm. Yep.
period.
Yeah.
You can tell your own stories. You can decide what the impact is for your community.
Hmm.
Like you he made a point to say like, people want like the best practices. And he said, best practices are like from the past.
Yeah.
And people are going to push back on that because they're going to say, well, what's the research say and what does XYZ say? And it's like, yeah, but like is XYZ here right now with this group of students in this community in this day and age?
Yep.
Because if it is, then great. But if it's not, then it might not be the best practice and probably isn't the best practice for this community in this location at this moment in time.
Hmm.
And he said very openly, like leaders and whatnot don't like hearing that
Hmm.
because we've been trained, myself included, to be compliant and check the box and do those things. And, Scott says the aha moment is when people realize that they can figure out what's right for themselves in their system.
Yeah. Yep. And guess where we're going next week?
I know, I'm so excited.
Yeah.
Like when you have this type of leadership that is on board with this type of work that Scott's talking about and what Christy talks about and what Gary's talked about all on this series, you are about to witness what can happen in a school district because that's where we're headed next. We're going to look at a school district that has leadership that is like, yes, 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 yes. Go for it, do it, experiment, try it. And like we were so jazzed to have this conversation and we cannot wait to share with you. You guys have to wait. Unfortunately, 1 week. But it's an episode you don't want to miss.
Yeah.
And this series is really stretching us, I think, to kind of look at innovation from different levels.
Hmm.
And how the transformation can occur at different levels so that wherever you're at
Hmm.
listening to this podcast, there's an episode for where you're at and the level you're at. But ultimately, you're probably gonna have to throw out some playbooks, some rule books. You're gonna have to figure out, like, take all of this and be like, okay, this is the piece I needed for my community
Hmm.
because we can't we're not there. Like we can't say, oh, this is the step you need. um and that figuring that step out is like at the heart of what Scott is talking about for phase one. It seems like you have to let go of what you think you need and discover, and it's a discovery process, what you actually need. And that goes for students, teachers, admin, community, business, all of it.
Yep.
That's the work.
100%. We have to throw out that playbook and things that we think I've seen it hands down in our program that we have, an internship. The person we're going to talk to next week is going to open this wide open, and you're going to see and hear some stories and some strategies that maybe if you're there, you're probably going to want to connect and see what happens here. So that's a big cliffhanger, but make sure you guys are, look, every week is another master class. We're giving them away. I think, Scott, Christy, Gary, everybody is giving away a lot of great information and tidbits. If you want more, you can obviously connect with them. There's just so much learning going on here. I just love it. So, we're going to wrap this episode up, and we're going to go into episode 402 next week. So thank you all for listening. Make sure you hit that subscribe, share this out. Trust me, we're here listening. If you want to be on this podcast, go to our website, disrupteducationpodcast.com. There is an inquiries page down at the bottom. I still got hundreds of emails, and I had just send that back out. We do read those, and people do get on. It's just we got a lot. We got a lot. So, all right, guys, thank you so much. We'll talk to you next time on the Disrupt Education podcast. For Alli Dahl, I'm Peter Hostrawser. See you later.
Thank you for joining us on the Disrupt Education podcast. If you found today's conversation valuable, we'd appreciate it if you subscribed and shared it with someone on their own learning journey. We're also excited to announce our new career coaching services, where you can work directly with Peter and Alli to clarify your path and showcase your unique value. Visit disrupteducationpodcast.com to learn more. Until next time, keep questioning, keep growing, and keep disrupting education.